Suvaha, Om Mahaha, Om Janaha, Om Tapaha, Om Satyam, Om Tat Savitur Varanyam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat, Om Apo Jyoti Rasomritam Brahma Bhur Bhuvasuvar Om.
Finally. Finally.
Finally, let's get going. So, I have a question. When you were visiting the Lakes District last week, did you by any chance drop down to Venice and try to find those 3 pebbles? I was hoping that maybe you would.
I tried to convince the group that I was with to do that, but they wanted to stay in Lake Como.
Well, I don't blame them. I don't think anybody wants to go dive in that mud, but oh well. So I thought maybe you would try to redeem Mr. Sinnott.
I wonder if I could sense their presence if I were to just use my sense of energy awareness.
Yeah. Well, let's see. We are on letter number 139. We've finished the letters from the Mahatmas. And now there are a few letters that are from HPB. And it becomes more and more obvious why he included those in the box of Mahatma letters. Because at this point, she's now speaking on behalf of the masters, giving advice to Sinnott. He realizes now that he's not getting any more communications. And so she is his only source. And he's actually paying a little more attention to that now. Before we start this, though, I want to read a little bit of information about Countess Wachtmeister. She was born in Italy. Her father was French and her mother was English. And she married a cousin who was a count in Sweden, and that made her a countess.
And that's where the very German-sounding last name no doubtly comes from.
Wachtmeister, yes.
Not from French father or British mother.
Her maiden name was not Wachtmeister. So, yes. But she's now a countess in Sweden. And she's a lovely individual. She's very psychic. She's very spiritual. And she was a godsend to HPB at this time in her life when everything else was falling apart. Countess Wachtmeister showed up. She was being followed for several years by the Mahatmas, and they were actually revealing and communicating with her even before she met HPB. So it was a real blessing for HPB to get her help. And she lived with her, was her constant companion with few exceptions, for approximately 3 years.
I wonder if there are any written communications that she might have had.
I would have to check. Mm-hmm. But here's a very interesting note. I'm going to have Paul read, and once again, this is from the Theosophy Wiki page. So make sure you go to that website, theosophy.wiki, and search for Constance Wachtmeister, and you will find this information. Go ahead.
In the autumn of 1885, the Countess was getting ready to go to Italy to spend the winter with some friends when a singular phenomenon happened. I was making preparations to leave my home in Sweden to spend the winter with some friends in Italy. I was arranging and laying aside the articles I intended to take with me to Italy when I heard a voice saying, Take that book. It will be useful to you on your journey. I may as well say at once that I have the faculties of clairvoyance and clairaudience rather strongly developed. I turned my eyes on a manuscript volume I had placed among the heap of things to be locked away until my return. Certainly it seemed a singular, inappropriate vade mecum for a holiday, being a collection of notes on the tarot. The tarot, interesting.
Yeah.
And passages in the Kabbalah that had been compiled for me by a friend. However, I decided to take it with me and laid the book in the bottom of one of my traveling trunks. Oh my gosh, traveling trunks.
Yeah, she was wealthy. She had...
Traveling trunk.
Yes.
You have those, right? You have some
Oh,
traveling
yeah, all Louis Vuitton.
Yeah.
I've got a whole set, including the big steamer trunk. Yeah.
On her way to Italy, she stopped at Elberfeld, stayed for some days with Madame Gebhardt. When she was about to depart, she got a telegram from H.P. Blavatsky requesting the Countess to join her at Würzburg.
In Germany, that's where she was working on the Secret Doctrine at the time.
Oh, interesting. Soon after she arrived, she had the following incident. So, meaning soon after she arrived in Würzburg?
Yes.
Okay. I remember very well that it was then, on going into the dining room together to take some tea, that she said to me abruptly, as of something that had been dwelling on her mind, "Master says you have a book for me of which I am much in need." Huh. "No, indeed," I replied. "I have no books with me." "Think again," she said. "Master says you were told in Sweden to bring a book on the tarot and the Kabbalah."
Yeah.
Then I recollected the circumstances that I have related before. From the time I had placed the volume in the bottom of my box, it had been out of my sight and out of my mind. Now, when I hurried to the bedroom, unlocked the trunk, and dived to the bottom, I found it in the same corner I had left it when packing in Sweden, undisturbed from that moment to this.
Yeah. So she was a real candidate for Chelasship. She is one of the very few Europeans that, as far as I can tell, did not flat out fail as a Chela. We'll give you more information about that at the end of our series on different Chelas. But she was faithful to HPB to the day she died. She was of an equal type of companionship because HPB was raised with money and with nobility, and she fit right into that. And she didn't have the pretensions that the English did. She wasn't at all pretentious. She actually appreciated the simplicity of HPB's lifestyle, and it suited her just fine. So they made perfect companions as far as working together, and Constance Wachtmeister being her help. She would do errands and take care of business for her, not just like a servant, but as a companion, a confidant. So this is going to come up in our letter from HPB to Senate. Now, this was received in January 1886. It was written on January 6th, 1886. Now, we have to give you a little background. The final Hodgson Report came out at the very end of 1885, just in time for New Year's. And I think it was on the last day of the year that HPB got a copy of it. And it was devastating. Everything in it was against her and saying that she was a complete fraud, invented the Mahatmas. None of the letters were written by anyone except her, by her own hand. And she was devastated. Constance Wachtmeister said that she was useless for about 2 weeks as far as being able to focus on the Secret Doctrine. For 2 weeks, she was beside herself and trying to wrap her head around what this meant. And finally, she got her act together. And this is only 1 week, barely 1 week after she received it. But you'll see already that she's adopting the attitude of the Mahatmas. And it's really good to see how they look at things and how they were able to calm her down and get her focused once again by getting some logic into her mind.
It's so sad every time I hear stories like this or aspects of the history where theosophy and HPB are being portrayed in this negative light, and that's still prevalent, that sentiment about the TS and HPB. I don't know why that's more prevalent than the good reviews and all the positive things, even today.
People love scandal and they love emotions. So if it's scandalous, if it's dramatic, they love that. The proof of the pudding is in what her works were.
Yeah.
And she's going to mention that. The Secret Doctrine is the proof that she was not inventing all of this. But you would have to be, number one, willing to go through that and read it. You would have to be intelligent enough to at least have some grasp of what it is that she's teaching in the Secret Doctrine, and you would have to have discernment. Very, very few people have that. On the other hand, you have lots of people who want her to be guilty of all of these sins because, let's face it, people love that. It's dramatic. Mm-hmm. You've got an adventuress who fooled everybody, or at least fooled a lot of people for a while until they got wise because of this report. Let's go ahead and see what she's telling Mr. Sinnott, because he also is devastated by this report.
He is. Okay, well, at least he's got a heart.
Yes.
Dear Mr. Sinnott, I am impressed to give you the following. First, let me tell you that the dear Countess went off like a shot to Munich to try and save Huba Schleiden from his weakness and the society from crumbling down.
Huba Schleiden, remember, was the president of the TS in Germany, and he was very faithful, but when he heard about this report, he fell apart, and we'll find out more about that later.
She was in a trance the whole evening, getting in and out of her body. She saw Master and felt his presence all night. She is a great clairvoyant. It's really nice to hear.
Yeah.
Well, after reading a few pages of the Hodgson Report, I was so disgusted with Hume's gratuitous lies and Hodgson's absurd inferences that I nearly gave up everything in despair. What could I do or say against evidence on the natural, worldly plane? Everything went against me, and I had but to die.
Remember that Hume was the manipulator behind the scenes. He was the instigator of the whole thing. The investigation was going very well until he showed up and started filling Hodgson full of lies. And he did such a good job of it. He's an excellent debater. He could talk the hind leg off a cow. But he was able to convince Hodgson that he was telling the truth and that HPB and the rest were all lying.
I went to bed and had the most extraordinary vision. I had vainly called upon the masters, who didn't come during my waking state, but now in my sleep I saw them both. I was again in Mahatma KH's house, a scene from years back. I was sitting in a corner on a mat. He was walking about the room in his riding outfit, and Master was talking to someone behind the door. I remind can't, I said in answer to a question of his about a dead aunt.
And I think what she meant to say was, I can't remember. She doesn't make it clear, but she obviously is not speaking very well.
He smiled and said, "Funny English you use."
Yeah.
Then I felt ashamed, hurt in my vanity, and began thinking, in my dream or vision, mind you, which was the exact reproduction of what had taken place, word for word, 16 years ago. Now that I am here and speaking nothing but English, perhaps I can learn to speak better with him. To make it clear, with Master I also used English which, whether bad or good, was the same for him, as he does not speak it, but understands every word I say out of my head. That's
now,
interesting.
Yes. Now, remember, this would have been in 1870. So 3 years before she went to America, she was with the Mahatmas, staying with them for a period of time, as we will see, just 3 years previously. And so she's explaining that the Mahatmas can read her mind, and they see everything. She'll tell more about it.
So did KH learn English in those few years?
No, KH was teaching her English.
Doesn't she just say that he didn't speak English, but he still understood every word?
Morya.
Oh, I'm sorry. Her master is Morya, not KH. Okay,
Yes.
I was getting confused.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I forget.
KH, I don't know when he first learned English, but he spent several years in Europe and learned English quite well. But Morya did not speak English. She's going to explain a little bit more about that.
But all the letters that Morya wrote were in
perfect English, almost perfect English, yes.
Wow. I'll repeat the last sentence. To make it clear, with Master, I also used English, which, whether good or bad, was the same for him, as he does not speak it, but understands every word I say out of my head. And I am made to understand him. How, I couldn't tell or explain if I were killed, but I do.
So we find out also that when Morya wants to write in English, not here, she doesn't reveal that, but in other letters we found out that he will project his thoughts either into HPB's brain or KH's or Olcott and see what the result is. So it's a higher thought, not on the lower mental plane. But from the higher mental plane, he projects that into their brain, and it does an automatic translation of it.
That's like the original Google Translate app.
Yes, exactly.
In the cloud.
Even better, though,
Even better,
because it gets all of the little details correct.
With DK, I also spoke English, he speaking it better even than Mahatma KH. Then in my dream still, 3 months later, as I was made to feel in that vision, I was standing before Mahatma KH near the old building that was later taken down. He was looking at it, and as Master was not at home, I took a few sentences I was studying in Senzar to him in his sister's room and asked him to tell me if I translated them correctly, and gave him a slip of paper with these sentences written in English. He read them, and correcting the interpretation, read them over and said, "Now your English is becoming better. Try to pick out of my head even the little I know of it." And he put his hand on my forehead in the region of memory and squeezed his fingers on it.
I'm assuming in this area, memory is not all in one area of the brain. It depends on what type, but it sounds like he did something similar to this.
And I felt even the same trifling pain in it as then, and the cold shiver I had experienced. And after that day, he did so with my head daily for about 2 months. Wow, I love these little hints and nuggets that we get about these techniques they do.
Yes, where do you find that anywhere else? You do not.
Jeez.
These Mahatma letters are just incredibly helpful.
They're so rich with these little details. Daily for about 2 months. Again, the scene changes, and I am going away with Master, who is sending me off back to Europe.
It sounds like he's accompanying her somewhere to begin her trip back to Europe, based on what she next says.
I am bidding goodbye to his sister and her child and all the Chelas.
And here, she's not talking about Morya, she's talking about KH. She kind of switches. So her master, Morya, is taking her somewhere. She's bidding goodbye to the ones who are remaining behind, which is KH, his sister, and her son.
So this is the first time we're learning that KH has a sister?
Yes. He has a sister and a nephew. Yes.
Do we know anything about them?
Only little hints like this.
Does it seem like she's a biological sister? Or
as
maybe...
far as we can tell, yeah.
Whoa.
So that means that he's not all that old. He's not 150 years old, like some of the others might be.
Wow. A sister. I wonder if she's a teacher as well and what she's up to, or what she was up to. That's interesting.
That's all we know, little hints like this.
KH has a sister. Wow. I listen to what the masters tell me, and then come the parting words of Mahatma KH, laughing at me as he always did, and saying, well, if you have not learned much of the sacred sciences and practical occultism, and who could expect a woman to, you have learned at any rate a little English. He's being sarcastic, right?
Yeah, he's being funny.
Okay. You speak it now only a little worse than I do. And he laughed.
So he does laugh quite often, as she says. None of them take life nearly as seriously as we do. They take it more seriously than we do, but they don't let it get to them. They don't fret about things. It water off their back just like a duck. That's how they go through life. The trials and tribulations are those caused by other people because they don't have their own other than the tests that they have to pass. So they do have trials. They do have trials, but they don't fret about it. They plod along. If they fail once, they pick themselves up and keep trying. Try.
Jeez. Again, the scene changes. So she's still talking about her dream. She's still giving us
this was a dream from 1870, and now she's fast-forwarding in the dream. This is still part of the dream.
Again, the scene changes. I'm at 47th Street, New York, writing Isis.
So 1877 now, just a few years earlier.
And his voice is dictating to me. That'd be Morya would be dictating to her.
I'm not sure whether it's Morya or KH.
Okay. I know we've talked about this a little bit, but there's a lot of reverence that she has, obviously, for the Mahatmas, because she capitalizes the H, just like God in religions.
She didn't always capitalize that, but most of the Chelas did. They used the capital H for the pronouns for the Mahatmas whenever they wrote about them.
It's probably more about respect than putting them into a position of being a deity, for example.
No, when we say someone is my Lord and Master, they take that literally. He is a Lord, that is his position, and he is my master. Whatever he tells me he wants done, I do it now. That's why the Europeans in general did not make good Chelas. They're like, yeah, well, we're the superior one. Get that straight first, and then we can talk.
They're not teachable.
They're not.
In modern language, they're not coachable. They're not open to feedback.
Coachable.
Okay.
They're not. No, they're not. And we're learning that. The Mahatmas are learning that. They pretty much learned their lesson at this point.
So she's being dictated to, and she's writing Isis. Mm-hmm. In that dream or retrospective vision, I once more rewrote all of Isis. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
In the dream?
In her dream, it was like she rewrote. Thick. Yeah, it's 2 volumes.
Yeah.
2 volumes.
How long was that dream?
Well, that can happen in a matter of seconds.
Yes. Time isn't the same, I know.
Yes.
Yeah. I once more rewrote all of Isis and could now point out all the pages and sentences Mahatma KH dictated and those that Master did. In my bad English, when Olcott tore his hair out by handfuls in despair to ever make out the meaning of what was intended. Well, that makes me feel better if Olcott can't understand Isis.
No, well, she's talking about how bad her English was.
Oh, not the content of the... Okay.
Right.
Okay.
No, when she got to... And she's going to explain it. When she got to America, her English was not good. And yet she was writing this 2-volume book. Mm-hmm. And Olcott was trying to help her with correcting the English for it. And it was not easy. It was a mess.
The process of being dictated to, though. So Morya and KH are dictating to her. Dictation sounds like word for word. It's not just thought transference.
I'm not sure that she did it exactly that way. I think in some cases she was the one who had to come up with the English.
That would make sense. I guess the word dictate sounds like it's literal word for word, but that's probably not what happened. It was more of a concept transference.
We'll talk later about someone who did take that type of dictation where it was literally word for word.
We've had instances, the different kinds of mediumship where it's, I again saw myself night after night in bed, writing Isis in my dreams. At New York, positively writing it in my sleep, and felt sentences by Mahatma KH impressing themselves on my memory. Then, as I was awakening from that vision in Würzburg now, I heard Mahatma KH's voice.
So now she's in the present time.
So she's waking up, and the voice says, "And now put two and two together, poor blind woman. Even the bad English and the way you construct sentences, you have learned from me. Throw off the smear thrown upon you by that misguided, conceited man, Hodgson. Explain the truth to the few friends who will believe you. For the public never will, until the day that the Secret Doctrine comes out." I awoke, and it was like a flash of lightning, but I still did not understand what it referred to.
So now we're going to find out why the Countess went off like a flash to Munich.
Usually her communication with the masters is not mysterious, though. They have great communication, I thought. No?
Yes, they do, but they do things in different ways at different times. She's being tested too all the time.
That makes sense. But an hour after, there comes Huba Schleiden's letter to the Countess, in which he says that unless I explain how it is that such a similarity as that found and proven by Hodgson between my faulty English and certain of Mahatma KH's expressions, the construction of sentences and peculiar French sayings, I will stand forever accused of deceit and forgery.
Yeah, so he's ready to bolt. He's ready to say, you know what, I got caught up in this fraudulent activity and I want nothing to it unless you can explain it to me.
Okay, the president of the TS is going to bolt. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Of course, it's because I learned my English from him.
From KH.
Mm-hmm. Even Olcott will understand. You know, and I told it to many friends and enemies, that I was taught dreadful Yorkshire by my nurse, that's funny, whom we called governess. From the time my father brought me to England, when I was 14, thinking I spoke beautiful English, and people asked him if he had me educated in Yorkshire or Ireland, and laughed at my accent and way of speaking, I gave up English altogether. That's sad. Trying to avoid speaking it as much as I could.
So imagine that, a 14-year-old girl brought up with a governess teaching her what she thought was proper English, and then she travels with her father to London, and people are like, where did you learn your English? Because Yorkshire is not a whole lot better than Cockney English. And being 14 years old, she was horribly ashamed. So she's like, I'm not speaking English
Is Yorkshire anywhere near London, or is it completely somewhere?
It's north.
Yeah.
I don't know how far away, but it's a different county.
Well, that's sad. From 14 till I was over 40, I never spoke it, let alone writing, and forgot it entirely. Really? Until she was 40, she didn't speak any English.
Well, she avoided conversations in English, apparently. I'm sure there were times when she had to, but...
About how old would she have been around 1875 when the TS started? She was over 40, or under 40. Well,
she was, let's see, in 1875, she was 44.
So she had returned to some English at that point.
Yeah. She was trying to learn it from KH. Remember, I remind can't. So that's how poor her English was when she went to work with the Mahatmas.
Olcott and Judge and all the original members, they wouldn't have been able to communicate with her in French or Russian, so she would have had to speak to them in English.
Most of them spoke French.
Okay.
I don't know about Judge. I don't think he spoke it that much. But definitely Olcott and a lot of educated people spoke French.
So they could have been
days.
communicating with HPB. It could have been in French.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just, I like seeing that context there to imagine how it went. I could read, which I did very little of in English, but I could not speak it. I remember how difficult it was for me to understand a well-written book in English as far back as only 1867 in Venice. All I knew when I came to America in 1873 was to speak a little, and Olcott and Judge and all who knew me then can testify to this. I always ask questions right before the information is given. I wish people saw an article I once attempted to write for the Banner of Light when instead of sanguine, I put sanguinary.
And we use those words all the time today, right?
Well, I've heard sanguine.
Okay, what does it mean?
Doesn't it have to do with blood?
Only vaguely. Sanguine is a description of a kind of naive, rosy-cheeked person, a Pollyanna sort of thing, like everything is rosy in their life.
Okay.
Sanguinary, on the other hand, means literally bloody, like a bloody crime scene or something like that.
Okay.
So when she says she confused the two, that's why she's so embarrassed.
Right.
They come from the same root, but mean totally different things.
I learned to write English through Isis, and Professor Alexander Wilder, who came weekly to help Olcott in arranging chapters and writing the index, can testify to it. So Olcott helped with Isis. I didn't realize that he was so involved. That's awesome.
He had to, because her English was not that great. So he and she would sit up late at night. He got home from work about 5:30 or so in the evening. They had dinner, and then they would work until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
Editing and him trying to help put things in order and rearranging. And Professor Wilder knew them also. He ended up being a really good help to them. He was the editor for Isis Unveiled. He was very well educated. He became a member of the Theosophical Society, and he was a tremendous help. He did the entire index for Isis Unveiled.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, he was a great help to them.
Our next video series is going to be on Isis Unveiled, right?
No, we're going straight to the Secret Doctrine.
Okay. Oh, gosh. Okay. Not. When I had finished it, and Isis, as published, is only 1/3 of what I wrote and destroyed. What? The 2 volumes is only 1/3 of what she had?
Yeah, that's how much material. She said there was a 3-foot-high stack of manuscript.
We know she likes to embellish.
Yeah, it was a mess. So Olcott trying to help sort that out and Professor Wilder helping. I can imagine the man-hours of work that went into that.
When I had finished it, I could write it as well as I do now. Neither worse nor better.
So she learned how to speak English while writing Isis Unveiled. But she was a fast learner. She really was. She was extremely intelligent.
My memory and its capacities seem to have diminished since then.
And she says the same thing in other letters about her French and her Russian. Around the same period, 1886, she was telling people, I don't remember my French or my Russian as well as I used to, so please forgive all of my errors.
Wow. So her first native language, she was losing that.
It's the same with anyone. Krishnamurti, for example, his native language was Telugu, and after he had been in England and America for several years, he could not speak it anymore.
Wow. No wonder my English and the Mahatmas are similar. Olcott's and mine are also in our Americanisms that I picked up from him these 10 years. Americanisms, that's funny.
Yeah. Though she was very fast at picking up local sayings, and she used them a lot into writing. That's why they're so amusing and interesting.
She did it when she was 14 from her governess, and now again.
Yes, picked up the accent and everything.
Now I want to Google this Yorkshire thing, because I know what Cockney sounds like.
There are videos of Yorkshire accents, yes.
I, translating everything mentally from the French. Why would she be translating from French?
In her mind. So she would think in French and then translate.
So at that time, French was what she was speaking most of.
Well, yes. So if she had to write something, she thought of it in French, and then she would translate that into English.
I, translating everything mentally from the French, would not have written skeptic with a K, though Mahatma KH did. And when I put it with a C, Olcott and Wilder and the proofreader corrected it.
So this has to do with the fact that when Isis Unveiled was written, there was a mixture of American spellings and British spellings.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
So it was all mixed up. And the English spell, let's see, I have to think of this. I think they spell it with a C. How do we spell it?
We spell it with a K, skeptic.
We spell it with a K. The British spell it with a C, but it comes from a both Latin and Greek word.
Well, that makes sense. The K would be the hard sound. The C could be... C is a weird letter because it's both.
So what she's referring to here is she's refuting some of the statements in this Hodgson report that show that she wrote the Mahatma letters. And she's saying, this shows that I did not, because KH would have written it one way and I would have written it a different way. There's no one among these people who believe the Hodgson report who have any degree of discernment whatsoever.
Well, that just shows that most people didn't have discernment because most people probably believed it.
Yeah, they did, absolutely, because they wanted to.
Now Mahatma KH has preserved the habit and stuck to it, and I never did, ever since I went to India. I would never have written carbolic instead of carbonic. And I was the first to notice the mistake in the Hume Mahatma letter in which it occurs.
So apparently Hume filled them full of all kinds of lies, including he shared some of his letters with them, except he obviously didn't give them the originals. He wrote them. He wrote a copy of them. And who knows how much he doctored that. He was bound and determined he was going to destroy any belief in the Mahatmas whatsoever. That was his goal. And she knows what the difference is between carbolic acid and carbonic acid. You know, right? Which one would you drink if I handed you 2 bottles?
I'm going to say carbonic.
Yeah.
Probably.
Carbonic is what's in the Coca-Cola that you drink. It's the fizziness. So, yeah, carbolic acid, if you drank that, you would be dead. So she knew the difference, but apparently Hume says that she used it incorrectly, and she said, I would not have done it that way. But she's going to explain that it may have been in something that I copied down. Let's read the rest of it.
It is mean and stupid of him to publish it, for if he says this referred to a sentence found in some magazine, then the word correctly written was there before my eyes, or those of any Chela who precipitated the letter. And therefore it is evidently a slip of the pen if there was any error in precipitation.
So she, as we see, is not a good arguer, a good debater, because she isn't real good at explaining things. She throws things out there. She's emotional when she does it. It's not clearly explained.
A good debater needs to be sharp and quick and precise and understandable easily.
And she puts way too much information instead of focusing on 1 or 2 little items that are very succinct and easy to grasp.
Well, she takes after KH.
Yes. Yes.
Even though Morya is her teacher, but most of the letters are from KH.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Quote, difference in handwriting, end quote. Oh, the great wonder. Did Master KH write all his letters personally? No, he didn't. How many Chelas have been precipitating and writing them? Heaven only knows. Yeah, didn't they do any handwriting analyses?
They did.
Well, that would have solved it right there.
Exactly. Well, guess what? The first handwriting experts told them these are completely different people who wrote these.
So they fired him and got...
That's exactly... Somebody said, no, we have our own handwriting experts.
We'll analyze it ourselves.
Yeah, let's... No. This is who you need to talk to. Yeah, they're exactly the same handwriting.
That's from the Yoga Sutras. If you don't like the results, fire that person and get someone who's going to tell you what you want.
Yes. We
hilarious.
have, what is it called? We have alternate facts. Yeah. We have the real facts. That stuff the experts are telling you, that's nonsense.
How many Chelas have been precipitating and writing them? Heaven only knows. Now, if there is such a marked difference between letters written by the same identical person mechanically, as the case with me, for instance, who never had consistent handwriting, how much more in precipitation, which is the photographic reproduction from one's head, and I bet anything that no Chela is capable of precipitating his own handwriting twice over in precisely the same way. There shall always be a marked difference. Who will believe all I say in this letter outside of a few? No one. I am demanded to give an explanation, and when it comes out, no one will believe it. But you have to show at least one thing. Occult transactions, letters, handwriting, etc., cannot be judged by the common standards of experts in this, that, and the other. There are only two possible scenarios. Either I have invented the masters and their philosophy, written their letters, etc., or I have not. If I have invented them, and the masters do not exist, then their handwritings could not have existed either.
Yeah.
I have invented them also, and if I have, how can I be called a forger?
Yeah, she owns that
actually,
material.
That's actually a pretty good argument.
It is.
Huh. Who are you forging if they don't exist?
Yeah.
Wow.
You created the characters. You owned everything about them.
That's a really good argument, actually. They would be my handwritings, and I have the right to use them if I am that clever. She's absolutely right.
Yeah. That's how stupid these people are that said, oh,
yeah,
she's a fraud, she's a fraud.
One way to see if someone is lying or has ulterior motive, if they're focusing on the wrong thing, or if they're trying to embellish, like that fact, you need to see the whole picture, see the details that everyone else misses. And if someone's trying to divert your attention towards something, be wary of that.
And here's the crazy part. If someone is committing fraud, especially someone who is from a noble family in Russia and is an adventurous, there are two things that they want. They want fame, and they certainly don't want scandal, and they want money or some kind of remuneration from it. They want, what's in it for me? What do I get out of it? She had no money. When she died, the attorney who came to write the will for her was concerned that they weren't looking properly for her family. And the people who were with her kind of laughed and said, when you see the amount of her assets, that won't even be an issue.
People probably thought she had money, though, because of her family.
She never did. Well, she had money. She received hundreds of thousands of dollars from her father when he died, but it all got spent. She could spend money faster than anybody.
But didn't she and Olcott use their own money to start the TS? Yeah.
And at that point, she had already spent most of her inheritance, so she didn't have much. But everything that they earned from the Theosophist, which was their property, they put right back into the TS. And that's what even Hume couldn't refute.
If there was a Sherlock Holmes type of person investigating this, or if we want to be Sherlock Holmes and we're trying to figure out who's telling the truth, what you just said is so important. Follow the money.
Yes.
Follow the money. If the money is not going to her, she's not guilty. Who's the money or the fame or whatever the person's after?
Right.
Follow it. See who's going to benefit the most from it.
Yeah.
And then probably you find the perpetrator, though.
Yes, exactly. What's the motive?
Yeah, exactly.
So it wasn't money because she didn't have any money. And
fame, follow fame.
Fame.
Notoriety.
Infamy was what she had at this point.
She didn't want it.
She was famous, but infamous, supposedly, because she was a liar. And the other thing that the Hodgson Report said was that, well, she was a Russian spy. And Hume said even that they're so stupid to have brought that back up. He wasn't the one that promoted that. Someone else told them that.
I can't believe in 1880 the Russian spies were a thing.
Yeah, we covered that. We covered that in our last session.
We did, you're right.
But yes, they were.
As to whether the philosophy and doctrine have been invented, The secret doctrine will show. Now I am here alone with the Countess as a witness. I have no books and no one to help me.
Yes, this is actually going to be a very good refutation of all of these charges that she invented all of the doctrine. She's now writing the Secret Doctrine. She's in Würzburg because she went to Europe to find a place where the weather and the climate was conducive to her working hours and hours. And one place after another wasn't very suitable. She ended up in Würzburg, but that happened to be too cold for her. But she has no books. She doesn't have a library. There isn't the equivalent of the British Library to go to search all of these ancient documents that she's going to refer to. How are people going to say I came up with these? And yet they did. Even after she wrote The Secret Doctrine, they said, oh, she copied from all of these other sources and claimed it as her own. Pure nonsense. People who, they make their conclusions first and then they make the facts fit their conclusion. People do that with their own beliefs too. If they believe in a certain religion or a certain political party, they determine ahead of time what they want the facts to show, and then they collect very selected facts to prove that point. It isn't helpful. It really isn't. Everything the Mahatmas are about is one single thing, the truth. That's all. What is the actual truth? And they don't have an ego, so they don't have an axe to grind. They don't have a predetermined conclusion. The conclusion is whatever the facts bring out. And they're wide open to that. If anyone can bring real facts to them, they will change their opinions.
I wonder if we see any stories of that. I'm sure it's true. Interesting. I'm sure they would. They're open-minded.
So we can learn from that.
Oh, for sure.
Everything that we believe and hold on to so tightly. This is why Paul and I always say, whatever your beliefs are, even theosophy, hold on to it loosely. If it serves a purpose, if it is helping, if it is helpful for a certain period of time, keep going with it. But the moment you get additional information that refutes any part of that, be willing to let it go. We're going to see that in the next few sessions. Some of you are going to have your beliefs tested sorely. You may decide to quit watching the series.
I was naive. When I first started assisting you and teaching together, the theory made logical sense, but I hadn't had the opportunities to apply all of it for myself in this lifetime yet. And that little piece that you just said about holding your beliefs lightly, in theory, I know that, but then I didn't realize how hard that actually is sometimes. And I think most people would find it surprisingly difficult to be willing to let something go, because our beliefs, in large part, make up our identity for a lot of people.
And it is your self-identity.
Yes. And being able to change that is weird. It's uncomfortable. It's like, have I been misled? Have I been, and I don't want to admit that. And like, oh my gosh, like that's tough. But it's a huge practice.
And it's a matter of lost money, lost investment. Because if you've invested thousands of hours into a system of belief, and especially if you've invested thousands and thousands of dollars into it, and for some people, their religious beliefs have cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you bring evidence that that's false, they will go berserk. They will chase you out of the room. Get out of here. That isn't even possible.
That's the exact same thing, just a different color when it comes to the guruing or the pedestaling of teachers. If your teacher or someone you revere is way up on that ivory tower because you put them there, and then you're presented with evidence that they're not who you thought they were? Nope. Sand, head in sand. I refuse.
And again, it's what I said before. You come up with the conclusion you want to be true, and you pick and choose those items only that support that. Ignore everything else.
Yeah.
You can do that as long as you want, for 40 lifetimes if you want, but you will not make progress on the spiritual path as long as you insist on doing that.
I have no books and no one to help me, and I tell you that the Secret Doctrine will be 20 times as learned, more philosophical, and better than Isis, which will be killed by it.
And it did.
She knew that before it even came out.
Yeah, they obviously had discussed with her what they were planning to do and what it was going to look like. So she knew that this was going to blow the lid off of Isis. They had to be extremely careful with Isis and reveal only very small bits of information here and there because they were testing the waters. Now they've decided, especially because of the Hodgson Report, they're going to go all out now to refute that and to produce something that, if you continue to say that this is all fraudulent, you're really deceiving yourself.
I didn't realize that at all. So part of the push to get the Secret Doctrine out was to refute the... They would have written it anyway, though.
They were planning to anyway, but at the beginning, it was just going to be like a series of articles and a supplement to the Theosophist, and one chapter would come out each month. You could subscribe to that additional supplement to the Theosophist and collect all of those, and that would be the Secret Doctrine. Well, now they threw that out the window, and it's going to be a real 2-volume set, just like Isis was.
Now there are hundreds of things I am permitted to say and explain. It will show what a Russian spy can do, an alleged forger, plagiarist, etc. The whole doctrine is shown to be the mother stone. Wow. The foundation of all the, the foundation of all the religions, including Christianity, and on the strength of exoteric published Hindu books with their symbols explained esoterically. Oh my gosh, I love that. The extreme lucidity of esoteric Buddhism will also be shown, and its doctrines proven correct mathematically, geometrically, logically, and scientifically. Dope! Hodgson is very clever, but he is not clever enough for truth. Boom!
Yeah.
And it shall triumph, after which I can die peacefully. What?
Yeah. So this Hodgson Report actually did have a real major impact on Theosophy. It brought out all of their guns. HPB, up till this point, had written one book, Isis Unveiled. Numerous magazine articles, but only one book. And she did her very best writing after that came out. And she produced 4 more books. So whenever you have something that looks really desperate and damaging, don't think of it that way. Think of that as an impetus to make something evolve out of that, to get people fired up. So the very few people who still believed in her were fired up, and they were going to do something about it.
Looking back on it, that was a great thing. So, like we always say, nothing in life is, well, we don't say this, Shakespeare said it, right? Nothing in life is good or bad, but thinking makes it so. So at the time when the Hodgson Report came out, she was devastated. I think you said it took her 2 weeks to even be able to do anything. But that was the impetus for 4 more books and for everyone to rally. And so looking back on it, that probably had to happen that way.
Yeah. No, the Mahatmas actually, remember when Hume was vacillating back and forth, they actually put additional pressure on him to make him break one way or the other. to see what he was going to do.
Don't be lukewarm, right? We
Yes.
always say that.
Yes, nature doesn't like lukewarm people.
Make a decision and move forward. Yeah.
So they put a lot of stress on him to see which way he was going to go. And he went on the left-hand path.
Last paragraph here. And Hume's lies. He learned that such Tibetan paper could be procured near Darjeeling.
So another one of his lies, he said that something that she had written, one of the letters was written on a specific type of Tibetan paper. And he claimed that she got it when she was in Darjeeling. Remember when she went to meet the Mahatmas a year or two previously? And that's when she got that paper. She's going to refute that now.
He said masters had never written on such paper before I went to Darjeeling. Indeed, now I enclose a slip of such paper for your perusal that, with your memory, you are sure to recognize.
Because it has writing on it.
It is the original bit from which the first lessons of Master were given to you and Hume in his museum at Shimla.
In 1881.
You looked at it many times. Please, after looking at it, send it back to me. It is private and confidential, and I ask you, on your honor, not to let it out of your hands nor give it to anyone. No expert Orientalist would understand anything in it but letters, which have meaning for me and for no one else. But what I want you to see and remember is that I went to Darjeeling a year later after Hume had quarreled with KH, and I had this paper at Shimla when the first lessons were begun.
So, yeah.
She already had it.
But Hume just uses whatever facts suit his purpose. The same with the brooch. He said, oh, that's the same brooch that you had repaired in Bombay, but you didn't send it to your sister. You produced it as phenomena at my house. It was all phony. His wife would have recognized it, but she didn't dare contradict her husband. He was a tyrant, a bully. She's not going to say anything, but she would have known.
And all throughout the whole report, the same lies, false testimony, etc. Yours, no more broken down, H.P. Blavatsky.
So she's getting herself back together from a lot of coaching and a lot of help from the Mahatmas. They're like, take as long as you want to get over it, but we are going to get over it and we're going to get to work. We're ready whenever you are.
What year did she die, Blavatsky?
1891,
Okay.
May 8th.
So 5 years later.
Yeah. And that was the most productive period of her life. So
Secret Doctrine and 3 years.
The Secret Doctrine, The Voice of the Silence, The Key to Theosophy, which is an excellent book, and a Theosophical Glossary. So 4 really, really excellent books to study. I advise people to throw away almost every book that was published after she died and to go back to the standard. Go back to what we know is true. As we will see, things went in a very different direction after she died. All right. Are we a little more enlightened now? I am.
We are.
All right. Thank you all for following our progress here and our travels and trying to sort out the truth from fiction. Thank you.